Today's topic, I'm going to discuss what is a multi-year guaranteed annuity, also known as a MYGA. Where could this be used for retirement planning or even potentially retirement income planning? What are some of the problems with these sorts of accounts so that you could view it correctly and understand, okay, you might want to go into this sort of account versus another sort of account. And then how do you look at it from the 30,000 foot view to say, okay, if I'm looking to retire in X amount of years, or if I'm currently retired, how can I leverage a portion of my dollars into this MYGA sort of contract, making sure that you're avoiding the most common mistakes. So simply put, a MYGA or a multi-year guaranteed annuity is just a fixed annuity. So the difference between that and a variable annuity, as an example, is a fixed annuity will pay a fixed interest rate each year. So regardless of whatever the market's doing, if the market's ebbing and flowing all over the place, at the end of the year, if you, let's say you set up $100,000 into a 5-year account, and this was going to pay you a 3% rate of return, and let's just say that it was a consistent rate of return. I'm going to explain to you what the difference is between that. This would say that after the first year, you would receive a 3% credit onto your $100,000. So your new account balance would be sitting at $103,000. The next year, it will be 3% of this $103,000. The next year, it's going to be 3% of that higher number. So ultimately, when you fast forward after 5 years, your account balance would be sitting at $115,927. So when we combat that with something that would pay a fixed interest rate that's simple interest, well, you just be getting $3,000 of a credit each year, so that at the end of those 5 years, it would be only a $15,000. So their ending balance would be $115,000 even. So, this is obviously the MYGA works with the power of compound interest if somebody is not pulling out monies each year from this sort of account. So if they're not pulling out, and it really depends upon the carrier, but some carriers allow you to access up to 10%. Some carriers allow you to access your required minimum distribution. Some carriers only allow you to access what you've gained in interest. So there's some different flexibility between one carrier over the next, or some restrictions from one carrier over the next. But be mindful, the reason why somebody would leverage a MYGA versus leveraging a fixed account such as a bank CD would be that a bank CD is paying you simple interest, like this sort of situation. And then also bank CD interest rates are typically not as high as the correct multi-year guaranteed annuity, the correct MYGA. So like as an example, if bank CDs may be paying 1.5%, you might have a MYGA that's paying 3%. If let's say you have a bank CD that's paying 2.5%, you might have a MYGA that's paying 4.5%. So this is why individuals, they like that safety. They leverage insurance companies to go place their monies into this sort of account, but they're doing it for a set duration of time, understanding that after that set duration of time is met, they could take their monies and place it into something else, at that point in time. So if, let's say, you went with the complete opposite side of the coin, which is the variable annuity, you'd be placing your monies in there. It's kind of, look at it like a bucket, acts like a mutual fund type of account. Let's say you put $100,000 in there. It's going to be based on the sub accounts of the mutual funds that you've tied to this sort of account. So you're going to have certain fees that are coming out of the bottom of this bucket. Could be between 1% to 3% in fees. That's already going to be a negative to your account right out the gate. And then if anytime the markets are going up, they're going to be pouring those gains inside. Ultimately, the size of your bucket is going to be shrinking or getting larger based on the market performance each day with that variable annuity. You have other types of annuities, more for that safe accumulation play is a fixed index annuity, which works very similar to the fixed annuity. It's kind of like a blend, if you conceptualize it like a blend between a fixed and a variable. It will pay your interest every year on your anniversary date, so every 1 year from the date that you started, but it's either going to pay you a positive rate of return or a 0% rate of return, a positive rate of return or 0% rate of return. And what determines whether that's going to be a positive rate of return is based on the indexing strategies that you choose, those indexing options that you choose. So like as an example, if let's say you had a 5-year MYGA that was paying a 3% rate of return, we know each year you're going to get that 3% that's going to compound interest on top of each other. If the market goes up, you're getting 3%. If the market goes down, you're getting 3%. Everything's fixed. So think multi-year guaranteed annuity, that's going to be fixed. Now with a fixed index, let's say if you had a 5% cap as an example on your account, and the market, that index gained 10%, and then it lost 10%, and then it gained 20%, and then it lost 30%, and then it gained 3%. What does this look like from a crediting standpoint? Well, with a fixed index annuity, you would have received a plus 5% the first year, then a plus 0, then a plus 5%, then a plus 0, and then a plus 3%. So if you feel as if the market's not going to be favorable, if you get set up into the wrong fixed index annuity where it might not give you they might have limitations on the cap limits and you're not going into like an uncapped related strategy, there's a whole multitude of things you could do. This is where individuals just say, hey, I want to have a rate of return on my money. I want it to be fixed. I only want it for this set duration of time. And just to have that peace of mind that their money is safe and then they're getting some sort of fixed rate of return. So that's the real reasoning why somebody would leverage a MYGA as opposed to some of the other options available. One of the other things I mentioned is I say consistent interest versus drop-off rate. What do I mean by that? Well, you have some accounts, and it's very important to understand this concept because you might have some accounts that will give you a 4% fixed rate of return with a MYGA, and then the fine print says that they're going to reduce this rate down to 1% every year going forward. So like as an example, let's say if you had company A that was giving you a 4% rate, and then you didn't realize that they were going to give you a 1% rate each year going forward, you're going to get the 4% rate the first year versus company B that might give you a 3% fixed rate every year for all 5 of those years. This is ultimately going to give you 15% rates of return on compound interest. This one's going to be 4% plus 1% plus 1% plus 1% plus 1%, which will be a positive 9% after all 5 of those years. So an individual might get sucked into this little drop-off rate because they got suckered into, I'm going to get a 4% rate of return with company A versus only a 3% rate of return with company B. Well, you have to read the fine print. Does company B, does that mean that they're going to give you 3% and that's going to be consistent, 3% fixed every single year, or is there going to be some sort of drop-off? Another thing that I'll explain in the problem situation, but some of these accounts also have fees. So you might have something that looks like you have a 4% rate of return that's going to be consistent for all these years, for all 5 years, but then if you pass away, the only way your beneficiaries would be able to receive those monies is if you tack on an extra 0.5% rider fee. Or if you want to pull out monies within that time frame, you're going to have to tack on another 4.5% rider fee. So at the end of the day, when you net all these costs, by just giving you that flexibility, it will be still only that 3% rate of return versus maybe a MYGA that's paying 3.25% that doesn't have these different bells and whistles. They don't have these rider fees, but they still give you all those benefits. This would be a better account rather than the 4% that has these little rider fees tacked on there. So, there's a whole multitude of things. But it's important to understand which are the best rates and then really look underneath the hood to say, okay, is this what I'm truly getting? Because individuals get suckered left and right with these sorts of accounts. Now, there are some very good accounts out there. What typically happens is each month you'll see changes. So you might see like the top option with company XYZ one month, and then all of a sudden they might be in 7th place, the next month. And then company ABC might have started in 3rd place, and then they're going to be, in 1st place in the following month. So it really, at the time that you set that up, that's when you obviously want to lock in. You want to get grandfathered into those accounts so that okay, if you want to get in a 5-year or a 3-year or a 7-year, why would that make sense? So I hope that all that makes sense regarding, what is the multi-year guarantee annuity, and then now I want to go over some of the problems, some of the most common, misconceptions about these things, and then how to make sure that you could effectively leverage a MYGA for your own portfolio if that's something that's interesting to you. So the problems, like I brushed up on, was avoid the teaser rate, avoid that large rate. It could even be a 6% rate of return. Kind of think of it like a bonus, and then all of a sudden you'll drop down to 1% or could drop down to 2%, and just look at the math behind it. Does that make more sense than going into something that's more consistent? Let's say a 4% rate of return that will be consistent in there. So that's where, it's not magic, it's just math. Which aspect do you want to go with that's going to put you at a better situation after you're, set up in that 5-year account or that, 6-year account, 7-year account, whatever that is. And this is something that I touched up on, was saying the problems is some have fees. So not all of them have fees. Just some accounts will have fees, so that they're going to get the top rating. When you're looking at the best MYGAs, currently, you might see them in 1st place because it shows that they're giving you this high rate of return. But when you add up a death benefit related fee, when you add up the liquidity fees meaning that they'll charge you to take interest only from the account. Some they'll charge you to take out up to 10% per account per year. And then after that duration has been met, so like if you're in a 5-year account, what I mean by that is maybe they're going to charge you an extra 50 basis points to get set up into this account if you want to access 10% per year within the first 5 years. And then after the 5 years are done, then obviously this drops off because then you have full access to these monies. So whenever you're setting up a multi-year guaranteed annuity, be mindful that just like, conceptually like a bank CD, you want to go in there and you want to make sure to leverage that account for however long that duration is set up for. You don't want to go and set it up into this sort of account in, let's say, a 5-year or 7-year MYGA, and then all of a sudden after 3 years, you want to try to fully remove your monies because you get penalized with different surrender charges and surrender schedules because you didn't abide by the terms of the contract of what you originally set up with. So this is where, we've seen it, that individuals have been, duped into these things, unfortunately. They've been duped into these things thinking that they could just fully remove their monies at any time, and that's not, always the case. And lastly, it's all about finding the sweet spot. So what I mean by that is typically the longer that you hold your monies into these accounts, the higher the fixed interest rate will be. So you have some that will be a 2-year MYGA, you have 3-year, 4-year, 5-year, 6-year, you have them all the way up to 10-year multi-year guaranteed annuities. The 10-year is going to pay a higher rate of return than the 2-year because the individual is risking their monies for a longer duration of time. So because you're risking your monies longer before you be able to fully liquidate that without penalty, the insurance company is going to try to give you an incentive to leave those monies longer. So maybe like a 2-year account will pay you 2% rate of return versus a 10-year account, which may give you a 4% rate of return. Obviously, the 10-year is going to be higher, but now you have to restrict yourself for an extra 8 years by going in that 10-year. When I say finding the sweet spot, you could find, even though you'll have like the 10-year paying 4%, you might be able to find these little 7 years that are paying 4% or 4.25%, or you might find a 5-year that's paying 3.75%. So it would make more mathematical sense from a risk standpoint, from a flexibility standpoint, to go into the sweet spot that's specific to your situation on when you'd want to access these monies. Obviously, if you just want to have money set aside, get a good rate of return on it, you could go towards those longer durations, but typically it doesn't make sense to do so if you could accomplish your need by only using a 5-year, a 6-year, a 7-year, even a 4-year in some cases. You might not have to leverage that 8, 9, 10-year restricted type account. So that's where, just always keep your options open and understand your situation so that you could fill in the hole where this sort of account might work, very favorable for your position. So now I'm going to show you more of a 30,000 foot view to say, okay, if you're in a similar situation, obviously you could tweak it accordingly, but how can you set this up in an actual type of financial plan? And one of the things that we constantly harp on is called the 3 things scenario. And there's 3 things that every individual needs to figure out before they're retired, or if they're currently retired, how to stay retired forever. So where does this MYGA, the multi-year guaranteed annuity, fit within the 3 things scenario, and then also what we trademark as the retirement diet plan? And with this example, if let's say I have a male that's age 60, a client that's a male that's age 60, wants to retire at age 65, currently has $500,000 in different assets comprised of 401k, IRA, non-qualified accounts, cash accounts, whatever that case might be. We understand that at age 65, he's going to have Social Security income come to him of $40,000. He works for a company that offers him a pension plan, so that's going to be another income stream. And then his expenses in retirement, after doing budgeting analysis, we understand is going to be $80,000. So if we take $40,000 plus $50,000, that obviously equals $90,000. If we're looking at the 3 thing scenario, we always want to make sure step 1 is accomplished before we can move on to step 2. We want to make sure that step 1 and 2 is accomplished before we can move on to step 3. So in this situation, the income, in order to accomplish this step 1, we need to make sure that his guaranteed income sources, that his cash flow is going to be greater than or equal to what his expenses are, which we understand after doing budgeting analysis is $80,000. So with this situation, we know he has $500,000 of assets. If he's already able to suffice his $80,000 of expenses, then he does not need to use assets or monies from this $500,000 bucket to leverage for his income related need to accomplish his income step. So now he can move on to step 2. He didn't have to touch anything over here. Step 2, emergency. So rule of thumb is an individual should leave about 6 to 12 months of what their expenses are into some sort of liquid account. If let's say these accounts aren't liquid, they're just invested in the market, maybe he wants to place aside $50,000 from this account, put it into a money market account or a savings, leave that in savings, so that because about 6 to 12 months will be of 80,000 will be right around 50 grand. So just for really simple math, we know if he used 50,000 for step number 2, then he would have $450,000 remaining for the step number 3 for the growth/inflationary need. So the most effective way to tackle that step 3, that growth/inflationary need, is to understand what your tolerance for risk is or what your risk capacity is. If you're somebody that is risk tolerant, where you want to kind of, go more gung-ho in the market, you want to leverage different investments, different stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, whatever that case might be, well, then you might want to tilt a large portion of this 450,000 towards those investment, related realm to say, okay, well, these are all splurge monies. These are, more of my fund monies. I want to go and invest that, more aggressively. Or you could do is splice it up and make sure that you have some that's very aggressive, some that's more conservative, that's more of like a safe accumulation type strategy, and then others that are more of that fixed related realm, such as the MYGA. This is where part of our retirement diet plan process comes into effect. So whenever we get up to this step 3, we delve into all the specifics. We use an artificial intelligence software that allows us to pinpoint exactly what your risk score is, to understand what your appetite for risk is. So based on that, we could build out different portfolios to say, okay, out of this, maybe 250,000 should be leveraged towards investments, and then you have another 100,000 leveraged towards some safe accumulation type indexing strategy, and then you'll have a remaining 100,000 that we just want to make sure is set up with the best MYGA, because we know with the MYGA, the worst case scenarios, you have that fixed interest rate that will be there each year. So you're at least getting X amount of percentage. It's not going to be as high as the potential growth within this larger investment related segment, or this investment related allocation, and this kind of more safe accumulation side where you could leverage like a naked fixed index annuity. That's not going to be as low of a rate of return, or could potentially be a much higher rate of return than the MYGA, but will also not have that downward market risk that the investments do. So this could work off for an individual specific situation, or they could, if they're more risk averse, well, then maybe that might be teetered the other way around. It might say, okay, well, I only want to leverage $100,000 towards the market because it just scares the hell out of me. I want to leverage $100,000 towards some more of that safe accumulation, like those indexing strategies, and then I want to utilize 250,000 into different MYGAs. And then you could also ladder out these MYGAs. So you could say, okay, you have one MYGA that might be for a 3% rate of return for a 4-year. You could have another one that's a 4%, let's say, for a 5-year. You have another one that's, let's say, 4.5% for a 6-year. And then you have another that's a 5% for a 7-year. So in this situation, after the 4 years come due, you could just purchase a new 7-year, and then you're just living off the interest, and you're doing that laddering strategy. This is similar concepts to how individuals used to do retirement income planning in the 90s and the early 2000s, when you had bank CDs that were very high and fixed annuities that are very high with the interest rates. You were basically able to just live off the interest year by year by year. Each individual situation is different, so that's why it obviously makes sense to go and speak with a specialist and see, okay, whether or not a MYGA might be right for your situation. If you are tilt more towards that aspect of a risk-averse type investor, and you just want to have some sort of rate of return each year consistently, that's where it makes more sense to look at those MYGA routes, or to see which portion of your dollars, which portion of your leftover monies should be segmented towards that safe growth, towards that fixed related account. So if you found value in this video and you'd like to speak with a specialist, feel free to give our 1-800 number a call. It's 1-800-566-1002. Just reference this video, multi-year guaranteed annuity, or a MYGA, and then we'll make sure that the assistant will put you with the correct advisor. And we do different things. We do different screen shares, obviously Zoom calls. We do the just regular phone calls. But at the end of the day, it's all seeing, okay, what is your current situation? That's 30,000 foot view. What is your point A? What is your point B? Making sure you get from point A to point B successfully, and then from point B until, as morbid as it might sound, as date of death successfully. And that's what we want to make sure that everything is all ratcheted up correctly. And that's really what we key in on our retirement diet plan process. We set up a plan. We don't just set up a portfolio for an individual situation. The diet stands for distribution, investment, estate planning, and tax planning, making sure that you have all the key areas of financial planning covered so that you could be optimized in any market environment, up market, down market, or sideways market. If you have further questions, you could always review our website. This is afossifinancial.com or retiresharp.com. I'll bring you all to the same place. and you can set up an appointment. You have the little digital calendar link that's at the bottom. It'll also pop up on the screen if you're, I believe, on the website for at least like 3 to 5 minutes. You also have over here this new chat feature that we created if you want to chat with a live rep at any point in time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You could go, all you have to do is just add your email, your name, you start the conversation, and they could make sure that you're set up with a specialist as per your preferred date and time. But, once again, I want to thank you very much for watching this video. Feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Retire Sharp, so you can have access to the most updated videos. I want to try to put up a video or a couple of videos each week to make sure you guys are further educated on the current rates, on the current, financial, educational pieces that might be relevant to you during this current economic times. But thank you very much, and look forward to speaking with you.